All right, let's take that attractiveness to a whole new level and talking about love and marriage. Huh? This notion of romantic love seems to be a universal thing. It's like an evolutionary adaptation. What it does is it allows for the long-term relationship required in order to raise children. Because, of course, human beings have the longest period of dependence of any other animal on the adults. And so romantic love is everywhere. 89% of subsistence societies show it for sure. And the other 11%, it may just be difficult because they don't know how to use the right words, okay? So even though these notions of romantic love seem to be a universal thing, it most certainly doesn't seem to be universal around the world that romantic love is the basis of marriage. Okay, so in most parts of the world, arranged marriages still remain quite common. One of the creepiest Freudian things I've seen in a long time is that they've taken a look and we prefer mates that resemble our opposite sex. So in other words, males prefer mates who resemble their mother. OMG, girls, you're not off the hook because women prefer men that resemble their fathers. Oh, Freud, you creep. Okay. Love, look at this. Long story, but what's going on here is, as we said, we're drawn to attractive faces, attractive people. However, when we're in love, that attraction no longer holds. We're not drawn to the attractive faces. Here's an interesting image, mate selection among pre-industrial societies. And so it turns out, if you go from top to bottom, we get the most extreme form for women. That is, well, here, my bad. The most common form for men at the very bottom, where individuals select their partners on their own. They don't need approval from anybody else. See, in pre-industrial societies, 31% of men are free to just marry whoever they want, no permission necessary. But only 8% of women are given that kind of luxury. Go up to the top, absolute rigid. Parents choose partner, you are stuck. You have no choice. And that is much more common for women than for men. And as you work your way down this image, you find that it's kind of an interesting idea. And so in many societies, they're not like us. You have to get permission. And so two people fall in love, and the parents say no. Too bad, so sad. Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna allow it. And so it's an amazing thing how the family can do this. So yeah, the parents as matchmakers is a really common response in many parts of the world. Another interesting question, as far as is who are you allowed to marry? Okay, here's a little known fun fact for you. You know who Charles Darwin married? His cousin. Oh yeah, that's what it was, and it was perfectly acceptable. Not even just acceptable, but a preferred marriage style, because of course it keeps the wealth in the family. Charles Darwin's family was buku rich. I don't know if anybody knows that. They're the Wedgwood China Company over in England. So he marries his cousin Emma Wedgwood. Right? Well, in a lot of countries, cousin marriage is absolutely forbidden in some cultures, but preferred in others. But what's really kind of cool is this. This is a very cool image from an anthropology textbook. That there are two kinds of cousins. Right? You and I are like cousin. I guess you could have first cousin, second cousin, but this is not what they're talking about. Let's just stick to first cousins, okay? So your parents, siblings, children, okay? And it turns out that in many cultures, a cross cousin is, let's see, a cross cousin would be your mom's brother's children or your dad's sister's children, because dad and sister are a different gender and mom and brother are a different gender. Parallel cousins are your dad's brother's children or your mom's sister's children. And so a lot of cultures where cousin marriage is the preferred option, we find that cross-cousin marriage is desirable, but parallel cousin is just creepy and wrong. And so it's an interesting thing that you and I don't make really any distinction between a cross-cousin and a parallel cousin, and yet the acceptable behaviors with these two different types of people are so radically different are so radically different that one is forbidden and one is absolutely desirable. We find marriage ceremonies, okay, in different cultures can often involve gifts exchanges, monetary exchanges. We find that in some cultures, they have a dowry. In many European and Asian, and with a dowry system, what happens is the woman brings with her to the marriage. That is to say, the bride's family provides a large amount of resources that are brought into the marriage. And this dowry, though it is, owned by the husband, it is only owned by the husband as long as the marriage remains. If the marriage is to break, then this dowry goes with the woman again. So it's sort of intended to keep marriages together. A groom price or a bride price is the amount of money that is spent. Groom price, good and money given by the bride's family to the couple and to the parents of the groom. A bride price, goods and money given by the groom's family to the parents of the bride, or a bride service, labor given. And we find that, in so many societies, a dowry, see what it implies, and I'm not getting into the whole gender inequality thing, but a dowry system implies that it's expensive to marry off your daughters, right? That's what it implies. And so having daughters is an undesirable thing. And so it's an interesting thing in China. For a long time, they had this mentality or son preference. And so, as I may have told you earlier, they had the one-child policy, and through different procedures, different, scans, ultrasounds, you could figure out the gender of the baby, and there was a lot of selective abortions. But what they found was these ultrasounds were something that were illegal, number one, but apparently everybody in China knew that as long as you have enough money, you can get it done. Okay. Well, it turned out as a rule that it was the city people that tended to have the money for these ultrasounds, and so that's where these selective abortions were going on. But in the countryside, poor farmers and peasants, they didn't have no money for an ultrasound. And so all of a sudden you found that in the city, the ratio of male baby births to female baby births went really high. And so all of a sudden you got to some point somewhere in the early 2000s where the city was filled with too many males of marital age and too few females of marital age. And all of a sudden these peasants and farmers out in the countryside, they had something. See, in a society where traditionally the bride's family has to provide a dowry, all of a sudden, nope, guess what? There was a huge bride price that popped up. And it was an amazing thing how this misbalance or imbalance between the genders created such a fundamental change in the way that their society viewed marriage. Passionate love. We're starting to get into those things that I call wishy-washy, but whatever. Okay. So MRI scans from young adults intensely in love reveals very specific, you're looking at the person you're in love with, very specific brain differences than if you're looking at an acquaintance. Caudate nucleus in particular. We find there's not only this passionate love conception, but there's also this companionate love conception. So we find in the West, in Western societies, we tend to get married based on passionate love. But here's a quote somewhere. When two people are under the influence of the most violent, most insane, most elusive, and most transient of passions, they are required to swear they will remain in that excited, abnormal, and exhausting condition continuously until death do them part. Okay? In other words, George Bernard Shaw is saying using passionate love as a basis for marriage is just stupid. Okay? So in many parts of the world, companionate love is the key. And so what happens is in cultures that have arranged marriage, in fact, this is India, and in India they have some marriages are arranged marriages, some are marriages based on passionate love. And so what happens is that in an arranged marriage, the parents or some other matchmaker are going through. They don't just roll a dice and randomly throw people together. They look at characteristics, they look at features, they look at things that would ensure that companionate love will emerge with time. Okay, so the affection we feel for those whose lives are intertwined with our own. And so you see here that there's a Rubens love scale, whatever it is, score from 9 to 91. And you see, in the first year of marriage, those that are in a passionate love marriage have much more, quote, love than those in a companionate love. But take a look what happens at somewhere around 5 years, okay? Somewhere around 5 years, you find those in a passionate love marriage, the love scale plunges, while those in an arranged marriage, it increases. Presumably what happens is the more years together, because, you know, those that are in a passionate love marriage didn't necessarily check to see that they had things in common that would ensure that that love would increase. So there's different styles of love, okay? Love is not just love, all right? And so we find different people, and there are tests where they'll ask questions about people's relationships, and based on the responses will determine the love style people use. Like, my lover and I were attracted to each other immediately after we first met, you know, love at first sight. Wow, these are words I really can't speak in public. That word is freaking me out. Okay. I enjoyed playing the game of love with a number of different partners, etc. And so two different love styles are eros and ludus, and depending on how you respond. So erotic lovers early fall in love early, passionately. We find, there's agony and despair when you separate. Just real stormy kind of love. Whereas ludic lover, I'm making that up. Ludic lover sounds like a nice poem, and it works. So they're much more self-oriented. It's like, I'm not going to depend on you. I'm not going to commit to you. Like, as long as this relationship is benefiting me, I'm here. Okay. It's kind of like, I'm involved in this for the rewards, okay? Something of that nature. Two other forms. We've got Storge love and Pragma love. Pragma, as you can probably guess, practical, right? Logical. Let me think about the pluses and the minuses. A main consideration in choosing a lover is how they reflect on my family. Okay, nice. Storge love is a little bit different. It's a friendship kind of a thing. Where am I? Here, Storge love. It's a slow developing. It's a friendship. As it says in this question, doesn't it say? Yeah, look, it's hard to say exactly when we fell in love, because it just sort of builds and builds and builds. And maybe it's Storge love started with friendship and just sort of went from there, and then at some point you cross a line. I remember I had a former student, an advisee of mine, and she kept telling me about her friend. And I kept asking her, is this your boyfriend? And she says, no. And I said, I think you better think really hard on that, okay? And lo and behold, she got married 3 months later. It was like, she's like, thank you so much. I didn't realize. It was like, come on. It was just staring at you in the face, okay? But the point is, she had just sort of developed this intimate friendship that had just gotten to this level that she hadn't even realized she had crossed some kind of a line. As I said, pragmatic love, or pragma, self-oriented, practical, logical, something of this nature. Then we get manic love and agape, or agapic love. And we find manic love is just crazy, man. Woo, intense and stormy, Sometimes I get so excited about being in love that I can't sleep. Okay. But agape love is much deeper. In a lot of ways, agape love is, and I had a professor in college, a world religion professor, and he was teaching about these different forms of love. And he starts talking about agape love. And he was a minister, and he starts just crying in class. And he's talking about his love for God as agapic love, and this idea of absolutely pure and selfless love. Agape love is almost like altruism, just absolutely unselfish giving kind of love. So manic lovers, as we said, they're obsessive, they're jealous, they're irrational, possessive, all right? Things of this nature. Intense. They need constant attention, togetherness, okay? They're always testing. They want reassurance, okay? Want to make positive. Whereas agape, as we said, was just this altruistic love. It's like I feel pleasure by giving to you, which by definition means not altruistic. Okay, very forgiving, loyal, understanding. We're willing to compromise. We're empathic, things of this nature. Separation anxiety, you can read this whole thing. But what we find is that if two people are in love with each other and you separate them, then their brain will record essentially pain in the brain. So, cool. Here's an interesting one. I used to write these articles for a Korean newspaper for a couple of years, and they were basically articles in cross-cultural psychology designed to essentially teach Korean people about living in the United States, something like that. And so this particular article, what happened, the background on this one, because I mean this is just a little blurb from the big article, but I remember my wife and I had gone to the airport to pick up somebody coming in from Korea. And so we're waiting at the international terminal, and we're watching, the people coming off of the Korean flight coming out of the international terminal. And this one old guy comes out, and he's, carrying his luggage or pulling his luggage, and he comes to this old Korean woman, and you can tell they're, old couple, and they approach each other, and it's like, okay, she just came back from an international flight, right? And neither one smiled. They just bowed at each other. And then they walked off. It was like, what the hell is that? And so the whole idea is that this notion of affection, or PDAs, is something that is very culturally determined. Okay, very much a culturally determined thing. Although American acceptance of PDAs is spreading around the world. Now I've got something here. The only reason I've got this in my slideshow is because my wife swears by it. Okay? And only that. This is, did I not tell you we are in the land of touchy-feely? But this is a land that you guys love. So here we go. Okay, according to the idea of the love languages, there are these 5 languages of love that we use to express ourselves, and at the same time, there are these 5 languages of love that we might prefer to hear. We speak them, we prefer to hear them. And the problem is we might prefer to, we generally speak our love in one way, and our partner may or may not receive love in the same way. And so these 5 love languages, or 5 ways of speaking or desiring to hear the love, may or may not match. Okay? And so words of affirmation is the idea of expressing love through compliments, encouragement, things of this nature. Okay? And again, some people might use this as a way to express their love, and some people might find this as a way of receiving love. Okay? Quality time. That is, we can perhaps express love by spending time actually listening to each other. That's an interesting thing. But doing things together, basically. A third one is gifts. Okay? Expressing love either by giving or receiving gifts. Okay? You can express love by giving gifts, or feel that you are loved when you receive them. And so we find that it's an interesting problem when one partner expresses love in a different way than another partner receives love. Acts of service is another way of expressing or receiving love. And so an act of service is to, do the dishes spontaneously, oh wow, when did that happen, or something of that nature. And so kind of a back and forth in this way. And then finally, physical touch. And so again, some people prefer to express love, and some prefer to hear love in these different ways. And according to, I'm sure this is a Christian counselor, right? And so according to this idea, if a couple does not match their love languages, you can have marital problems. Okay? So, I'm done with the touchy-feely stuff. Blah. All right, but good on you. So I will stop there and come back and finish up this topic in one more shot.